Good evening, everyone. My name is Yeiry Guevara. Welcome to our program tonight. We are here in this amazing gallery, and we have a lovely treat. We have our Writers Remix series happening tonight, and a lot of thank yous, first of all. Again, thank you to my team, Abdu, Nayeli, that made this happen. Again, public programs team. We organize everything that's free and open for the public. This is our lectures, concerts, festivals, anything that you enjoy, please let us know, and thank our team. Shout out to our AV team, Adam and Jai as well, that will be assisting with us tonight, and our amazing AIW team will have a couple words as well to welcome you into the space. Some plugins for our programs that we do have going on. So this weekend is 713, so we do have Zumba if you want to get a head start on your Houston day on Sunday. We have another amazing program that is free and open to the public. That is on July 24th. That is our Loteria Game Night. It is sponsored by HEB. So we have a lot of HEB prizes, because groceries are expensive and you can win a gift card for free. All ages, that is on July 24th. We also, if you enjoy the series, we will have our last series on August 1st, and that is with Nuestra Palabra and Alma, and we'll be focusing on contemporary Cuban photography. So that is on August 1st. Again, this is our summer of immersion, so we have a lot of amazing installations, as you saw coming in. We have our Annika Yi as well. We have A.A. Murakami Floating Worlds across the street at our Beck building with the bubbles. You've probably seen it on social media. And so we will have a lecture actually with that curator on July 20th. So if you want to learn more about the bubbles and how they connect with Japanese art gallery rotations as well. So that will be on July 20th. And for that exhibition, we also have a concert with our local hero, the biggest Brandon. He will be performing there on August 29th. Again, we do have another special exhibition immediately downstairs in the next building called Parpia Collection, From India to the World. It's about textiles, fabrics, and that influence throughout. Again, we have lectures for that next week with some famous, renowned embroiderers, Asif Shaikh on Wednesday. And then we also have renowned Yale scholar, Ruth Barnes, speaking as a webinar and in person if you want to learn more. So that is happening next week. And again, just plugging in film, they have amazing series curation coming up. So they have an incredible 4K restoration happening this weekend. And again, if you're into film, we have an Akira Kurosawa series next month. So that'll be dope. So again, a little bit more about the series. It is an interactive program to experience the museum collection in a new, powerful way through the written word. The series amplifies local, emerging, established, published, unpublished, working writers who are holding it down in the vibrant literary scene here in Houston. This program merges the visual arts with the literary arts in a very profound, refreshing way. If you like what you see tonight, please let us know. Tag us on social. Feel free to let us know. Clap. You're welcomed and encouraged to applaud and make noises and ask questions at the end. So we will be around to be able to just really engage. So please praise the writers, applaud them at the end of their performances. Again, the last program of the series is on August 1st. It will be a Friday and it'll be a really good time. Without further ado, I will introduce our Masters of Ceremony. Oh no, wait, who's first? Aimee, if you'd like to present. Okay. So, thanks, Abdu.
Hello, everyone. Just to double check, Aimee, are you doing an intro for the gallery? Okay, never mind then. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? Okay, awesome, excellent. So, my name is Abdurrahman Dankwa, or Abdu for short. I'm going to be the Master of Ceremonies, introducing the artists and the pieces. We're going to be moving around the space. So we're going to be starting here, and then over there, and then we're going to move all the way to the back, and then we're going to finish off on that side of the gallery as well. So feel free to take your stools with you. We have extra stools over there in case you want to sit down. So I'll be introducing each piece and the poet, and then the poet will present, and then feel free, like Yeiry said, to applaud and make noise, and also give some space between the pieces, about a foot space, just in case you don't want to bump into it. It's expensive to replace. Afterwards, you're free to stay, mingle, and chat. We're going to have a bit of an informal style Q&A with the artists and some of the curators. And the museum does close at 9. Okay, so Our first poet is Reneem Bakir Alia. I'm going to talk about the pieces that she chose. She has 3 selected pieces. It's the 19th or 20th century Ottoman oud, the Quran manuscript from the 14th century Morocco, and then the Layla and Majnun titles that are right over there. So this oud is a very popular, it's one of the most characteristic Middle Eastern musical instruments, and you hear it all the time, even today, in a lot of Arab songs. The Quran manuscript over here is from the 14th century, and it's an extremely rare copy. The script itself, the writing, is distinct to the Moroccan region. And if you take a close look at it, there are gold embellishments that dictate where to take breaks, where the chapter ends, and things like that. And in the back, they have inscribed the family of the owners of the Quran that dates back to about 6 generations, as their birthdays, their names, their everything in there. So it's incredibly rare and beautiful. But I have the bio here for Reneem. So she is a Moroccan-Palestinian American poet and writer. She is an alumnus of the 2024 Tin House Summer Workshop and the 2025 Canyon Review Writers Workshop. She is the recipient of a Mellon Research Fellowship awarded by the University of Houston and the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. She is also the program coordinator for the Location Houston segment of the Real Poetry Film Festival, curated by Public Poetry. Please give it up for Reneem.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Reneem. So Abdurrahman introduced the pieces that I chose to write about today. The first will be about the oud. I chose this instrument largely because when you're trying to inform people about your culture, you can't really do that without speaking about music and sound. And so when I was reflecting on the instrument, I was thinking a lot about my relationship to Moroccan folk music and also Egyptian music of the 50s, specifically Abdel Halim, who, if you know, was a phenomenal music singer. And I grew up listening to his music, and before he sings, there's often about 5 to 10 minutes of just orchestral music, and the oud was often featured. So this poem is titled, After Strumming the Oud Reminds Me of Loss. How remembrance is a doorway laced with sorrow. I lightly caress its echo, my fingers trailing behind me, enveloped in the sound. A strum first, then repetition, like water, all light touch until suddenly submerged. The memory arises without permission. A child hums along with the oud. The old TV speakers muffle the static until song. How easily I am returned to life before loss. How easily I drift between both lives. The song plays on, the oud all ease and rhythm, the child entranced, her life at the precipice of shifting for the final time, until it's remade and undone. The song carries forward, nearing its end, the strum more prevalent, the cadence more urgent. I am running from time. I am slick with sweat, with reminders of a child, all eloquence, the soft light of the television aglow on her face as she turns to her grandmother, asking to replay the song, asking for a sound she will replay that lessened the thing itself. For all of language's uses, the music of life is best known in the strum of a memory begging to be attuned. Okay. Oh, thank you. The second piece that I chose is the Quran, featured right here. When I was taking the tour of the exhibit, It was mentioned that this specific Quran has the names of all of the family members who've owned it. And when I was in college, I studied history, and specifically Middle Eastern history and African history. And one of the things that I worked towards was building a family archive. And historically, in the Western world, there's this condescending idea that the Arab world does not have historical documentation. And so, and we do often have a process within our oral histories, but learning that the Quran was both a form of worship and also a form of historical documentations for our societies was, I felt, quite subversive to the way that the Western world understands historical documentation. So I wrote about my relationship to lineage and oral histories in this poem titled Portrait of a Family Tree Reclaimed. I have made a life of questions that are too existential to be answered over ate at sunset, of a dream of a family tree I had to build, one painstaking name after another. I have engraved their names into the page, mouthing the syllables into memory until they sound as natural as my mother speaking a foreign language, as unnatural as my tongue tripping over syllables in Darija I should know as well as I know self-imposed exile, a self-imposed outsider. I lay claim to my mothers, of whom I have a name to call on, but for some I do not have a tomb to visit. I have etched their names into a language they could not read. Kulthum, Fatna, Zohra, Aisha. I imitate a historian collecting fractured stories made whole with line breaks that cannot cover the inconsistencies, of which there are many, of which I do not attempt to conceal. In my grandparents' bedroom sits a Quran atop a bookshelf belonging to a man of history and literature. A man etched into the faces of 5 women, his Quran untouched, the spine rigid, his name lightly written on the first page, a beginning, a lineage birthed amidst his worship. Thank you. I'm gonna head over there. I'm gonna read my final piece, but I'm gonna move this mic over here. So the final piece that I chose was this Layla and Majnun tile. So Layla and Majnun is a folk tale which is quite well known amongst the Arab or Muslim world. It tells the story of a man named Qais and a woman named Layla and their love story, in which they are never able to be together, and ultimately Qais goes crazy, hence the name Majnun, which means crazy or mad in Arabic. But the story is ultimately an allegory of faith and devotion to the divine. And so I wrote this piece in the voice of Majnun, and it details his perspective on suffering and faith and devotion. It's titled Annihilation of the Self. Possessed is my name, and from it madness lays claim to my body. A name foretells a life. So you are named. So you are. Oh, beloved, call me back so I may whisper 99 names of devotion, and I stumble over my tongue, dripping with the need to be forgiven. I cannot recall each of my sins. They are plenty and unending. But so too is the God of heaven, of yearning, of desire. There is a wildness among the trees with which I have made a home, of which I have been remade a madman. My knees ache, my back arched in sujood. I am mourning a life I nearly had. Ar-Rahim, I plead, a moment devoid of grief is all I ask. A reprieve from that which has been and will be endured. I know only of my own lack, but I imagine a woman, not unlike me, in another world, in a language that has yet to exist, her hands lifted in worship, not unlike mine. Our plea enters the sky, the sun rising, and I have never known suffering to be so beautiful, to be so peaceful. I wish almost for death. I wish almost to relive it again. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was excellent. Thank you, Raneem. So our next speaker is Maha Abdul Wahab. She's also going to be doing a piece based off of Layla and Majnun. And Raneem gave a really good introduction to the piece. But another perspective about the story is that it's Majnun's impassioned love for Layla is a representation of a worshiper's love and need for God. And or some people might say that like his retreat from the mundane world is a metaphor for the journey towards the divine. And so keeping that in mind for whenever Maha presents her piece. And then the second piece that she chose is a bowl fragment that's behind us. So after this, we're going to move right behind this piece here. And the third one is going to be the Beggar's Bowl, which is near the end of the gallery. A little bit about the bowl fragment. It's a type of ceramic made in Central Asia. It has like these beautiful calligraphic texts and designs on them, and the bowls were meant to be used, and so people would eat from them, and when they finished their food, there'd be something on the bottom. And the inscription there it reads, "Deliberation before action protects you from regret." And then the Beggar's Bowl, which is down there, it's called a kashkul, and it's a container used by wandering Sufi dervishes, and then use it to collect money or other goods. They would practice this thing called zuhud, where they extract themselves from like daily life, and so they would just go around any place and just kind of ask for food and just dedicate their lives to worship. And so the bowls were usually like after a street performance of poetry or recitation, they would go around and collect whatever they need. So for Maha's bio, she's an English Literature and Creative Writing PhD candidate at the University of Houston. Her work has appeared in Grist, the Adroit Journal, 580 Split, Rusted Radishes, The Recluse, and elsewhere. Her critical and creative work explores the Arab-American diaspora and the avant-garde. She also edits poetry for the Beirut-based magazine, Rusted Radishes. Please give it up for Maha Abdul Wahab.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today and coming to hear us respond to these pieces. Thank you, Abdu, for the introduction. And thank you, Raneem, for the beautiful poem. I think it's really serendipitous that our work is going to overlap. So I've always been enamored by this love story for many reasons. I think devotion is obviously a very spiritual practice, as Abdu was saying. But I was looking at I was thinking about the materiality of the piece and how it was made. And cuerda seca is a Spanish term for like dry cord, which creates the borders around like the objects in the piece. But even with the borders, or even with the cord, the piece still maintains its like chaotic character, right? And it's like wildness. And I was just thinking about that as a metaphor for like Majnun having to be contained in the social and cultural borders of just, I guess, not being crazy, but he chooses his devotion and his wilderness over everything else. So, yeah, I'm responding to that aspect of the piece. And the poem is called Cuerda Seca, The Last Meeting. I have an epigraph by Angel Nafis. You ever look at a thing you ain't make, but become a mother in the looking. At first, I could not tell which was Layla and which was Majnun. His breasts I confused for an extra set of arms, mistook a crack in the archive for self-immolation. But I wouldn't put it past him. His collected animals, a symbol of wildness, his loyalty embodied, the burlap sap of his pant just enough to keep him chaste. I refuse to say Majnun because whose mind hasn't sundered like an impossibly alive molecule? Who of us have not gumshoed our way back into the lives of those forbidden to us, with or without chains? We never think we bottom out until we do. We delude ourselves with the best case scenario. The lover will always be there. The father's heart will soften. The casualties will be minimal. The real Helen will emerge to replace her replica, and the city will be rebuilt exactly as it was before. Poor Qais, the boy in the yellow rag, who mocked his father at the Kaaba with green-winged angels because he knew that to pray for an undemanding life would be to pray for annihilation, and instead requested to fall off the lip of the abyss into her further light. There is a physics here, of course. These stone paste panels had to justify their weight. A cloud cannot simply be a cloud. A leopard, not just a leopard, but an opening towards the necessary denouement, a figure in its final state of wounding. You wouldn't believe me, but I've seen it. A man banging his head against the kneecaps of a woman he's wronged. I have known and rounded up through the sickness of devotion without counting my losses. Just look at this palsied, dry cord around every which object, both a metaphor and a craft decision for cessation, for the necessary limits of wild. And finally, the last meeting, the leaves and flowers split between navy and citrine, each thread-bordered thing claiming its own ferocity. The colors recycled incessantly like a burnt-out textile machine, their mutual devotion spearheading towards an imperative finality. I hear her imploration like the whiz of a scrimshaw. Limit my grief, she says. Hold the rope of my camel and stretch out the small remainder of our lives. Pull it long ways like halawa. In other words, it is time for the lover to become the beloved. Okay, I'm gonna move to my next piece. Yeah, sure. Okay, so my next piece is about this bowl fragment. And I've always just been, when I was going through the tour with Anushka, we were talking a lot about the power of language, and obviously, the most important object to us as Muslims is divine revelation, the Quran. So language is just a very important part of our culture. And I was really drawn to this fragment that said deliberation before action protects you from regret, which obviously I agreed with, but I was thinking a lot about the times that we don't speak up and we over-deliberate to protect ourselves and other people. And my grandmother passed away a couple months ago, Allah yarhamha, and she was just a very outspoken person, and she always kind of upset the room, but she said things that needed to be said. So these are letters to my grandmother. Her name was Karima, so yeah. Dear Kay, I have given up all my beliefs. I want to talk to you about my summer, how I watched Iman, the boxer, pound a white girl's head in and win gold at the Olympics. I was in Cyprus sucking on watermelon juice and thinking about how good it would feel to pound someone's head in. How miraculous and childish and innocuous it would be to just throw a quiet little punch. I think about this a lot. I talk about it way too much. I sent all my friends Frantz Fanon's essay on violence to justify myself. Of course, it's political. Sometimes there's nothing more to be said, just a racist girl's face to punch in. Dear Kay, my life has been made and ruined by words, mostly by what I haven't said. I understand the necessity of the Quran as divine revelation and the way we protect its original word, our desire to keep it whole, forever intact. We edit our lives down so much we forget the baseline etymologies of living. The simple dust on the simple ground, the unpaved dirt back to purification, the fluff of a heron's wing in the rain, how it has followed me throughout the month of June as I write letters to my enemies, scrubbing down my anger. Dear Kay, most things aren't what they are. Do you remember the bull they sliced open? The blood like a river spouting out of its neck, all of it a word, a word, a word. I have been thinking mostly about the barzakh, the interspace between life and death, how it might be a metaphor for intimacy or language, its halfwayness to heaven or hell. Intimacy as mediation, words as barzakh, their meaning and consequence made manifest in the blank air in which they are delivered. They are simultaneously nothing and also that with which the axis of the world spins upon. Our good deeds meeting us in the underworld before Judgment Day, the perfumed angels that came to pick up your soul this past December, to take you to Allah's garden, ripe with the green birds of martyrdom. This interworld, our final pillar of salt look back before we become spangled metaphors. Dear Kay, I have learned the importance of language through not saying enough. I have deliberated to the point of paralysis. I have left my most prized feelings hidden between the plaster of bedroom walls. I have stepped foot into conversations only to shut my whole face down in response. I forgot to say I love you to my mother. I forgot to read Surat Maryam like I promised and meditate on her swollen body shaking the palm tree. But worst of all, I have forgotten to apologize, the beat of remorse lodged and tickling my throat. I've ended up here like you said I would, in the sweat drop of America, and still I have failed to say the things I needed to say. You were always good about that, upsetting the pseudo-tranquility of the space so that no one forgot you had a voice made of trombone, sluice, and apple crunch. You were always yelling, and I loved it. Nobody ever tells me about the past, but I assume you were yelling there too. Maybe you threw a black abaya out the window after a funeral, refusing it. Maybe you snuck water in between fasts and trusted in God's mercy as they taught us. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahimin. Arham Ar-Rahimin, sorry. Because when your husband died, we sat on the floor together and just cried like injured lambs. And that was true piety, crying at the foot of something you loved. Last letter. Dear Kay, I have seen women sometimes forget they are alive, just sit whole hours at the dock of their couches. I've known men who say nothing but my manhood, my manhood, my manhood. Men who figure every aspect of their lives into the math of their manhood, the whole slime of it drizzling out their mouth at the perfect slide-through juncture of an argument. I get tired of it, but I understand it too, because I am always slapping everyone in the face with my womanhood, and I know that we speak loudest when we are not heard. And so I am jealous of these bulls, jealous of their sedimented message, their self-assuredness and self-management, contained in their materiality, saying exactly what they mean to say, and to whom, and at the perfect pitch. And they only have to say it once. The words have landed where they are destined to land, and there is no bubbled up remorse, no regrets, nothing to redeem, nothing to remember. Just bejeweled etymology and rhizomes and dander and filigree and the earthenware body dazzling with an imperfect post-lapsarian mercy. Thank you. Thank you so much. My last object is over there, so I'm going to move the mic. If you guys could please move with me. Thank you guys for bearing with me and walking around the room with me. My last piece that I'm responding to is the Beggar's Bowl here, kashkul, which in Egyptian Arabic, kashkul means notebook. So I was meditating on that aspect of it as well. And I've been somebody who has struggled a lot with like pride and humility and greed in my life. So I'm just enamored by a lot of the Sufi practices and rituals that demand humility. I have been working on my posture for months. Calisthenics, yoga, core strength, scapular push-ups, imploring myself to look up, up, up at anything but the glass screen in my hand, measuring my breath through the length of my fingers, like a lotus flower pulsing against the mud. When the prophet ascended to heaven, the prayer instructions he was given were also the secret of the yogic body. It makes sense. It makes sense why I must discharge my electric forehead on the floor. The importance of the floor, its humbling stratum, siphoning the glitter of my arrogance up through my spine. I have discovered a kind of jazz within myself. I wiped down mats and mopped floors so I can afford its inquiry, believing in the synchronous act of love and study, that a subject becomes worthy of study once you decide to love it. When I attempt to disguise my fragility, I am reminded of the 7th grade, my pubescent brain suddenly becoming a bobbing target as the rubber of my forehead met the rubber of the ball. Or during soccer when they threw a shoe at my back because I couldn't manage any position well enough to let my team win. Yes, I faked my numbness, and yes, I betrayed myself. I, with them, acted as if nothing happened, as if the ball in the shoe were betrothed to my gut. It was my grandmother, months later, who told me the importance of throwing a shoe back. And later, when Muntazir Az-Zaidi threw the shoe at Bush during a press conference, I knew she was right. Dear ex-beloved, I thought about you the most here as they congratulated us for making it to the mat. I patted myself on the back and prayed for you. Here, I thought of Sufi saints, their soup kitchens, their cleaned up nafs, the bathroom they washed out as their final test of purification, my pride still sticking to my neck. Here, I thought of the body as cursive, connecting one harf to another. I thought of Kufic scripts that refused to bend, and I prayed for that kind of resilience. The bats outside my home are empty-bodied, their flight doubtless, assured, a curvature I envy. I don't know where an obsession with linearity originates or how it binds so closely to my concepts of love. When I come up to Cobra, I experience the waterfall of you. On my toes, you slip over my back like a wagon on a hill. I am undoing the weight, shimmying, twisting, turning, nodding, dancing you away. But what I am really trying to do here is superglue my forehead down to the mud tar of this mat, make it a forever kind of thing, turn it into a begging bowl, a kashkul of humility, to suture and sing off my arrogance, to remind myself I had the thing I wanted most and I lost it. Because I tried to fit the ocean in my bowl, forgetting that the bowl was in fact the ocean itself. Please forgive me for being such a goddamn fool, for looking past your shimmering head to find more gold. I understand it now. I am nothing, just a body pattern, a listless lap of shadow mourning, opting to be propulsive in my repentance, opening again and again and again, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Thank you all so much.
Thank you guys so much. We have one more artist. We're actually going to present on that side, that big piece right there. So I'm going to pick up this and everyone's going to shift over. All right. So Awais Hala is a Muslim Sudanese writer and poet whose voice developed in the suburbs of Southeast Houston. She caters to and is inspired by the memory of body and home, the lyricism of Arabic poetry, and the ever-standing question of the self. It is through writing that she makes sense of the world, and through the gift of community that her writing is strengthened. She is a regional spoken word competitor and an award recipient fiction writer. The piece that she chose here today is called Tajweed Read 2. It's this large scroll and it has written down the Quranic chapter called Surah Al-An'am. The content of the verse or the chapter itself isn't entirely important to the performance today, so I'm going to go right into why it looks this way. So traditionally, Arabic is written with these sort of characters or letters, and in the beginning of literature of Arabic, there were no vowels. So with one individual letter, you wouldn't know if it was an a, e, or an u, and then the same thing with all the other letters. And so at some point when non-Arab speakers were like, what is this word? They introduced these vowel marks. And so in this piece, the letters are removed, and all that we have is the vowel marks. And it's supposed to sort of be a meditation on the eloquence of tajweed, or the proper recitation of the Quran, rather than the actual words themselves. So now, without that out of the way, please give it up for Awais Hala.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for being here. I'm going to add on a little bit to what Abdu has just said about this particular art piece and why I chose it. So the Iranian artist Poran Jinshi created this piece as an interpretation of the most important aspect of the Quran, its recitation. Several Quranic chapters or surahs have been copied on a paper scroll that hangs vertically, while the vowels, like Abdu said, verse divisions and chapter headings are meticulously marked. The consonants, which identify the actual text in Arabic, are intentionally left out. The proper recitation of the Quran, known as tajweed, is bound to and regulated by these punctuation marks, which explains why this is the only Arabic text that always indicates them. Their presence on this scroll leaves no doubt about the identity of the copied text, which nonetheless remains incomplete, disembodied, and thus illegible. So the removal of the letters, the actual letters of the verses of this chapter, are meant to push your attention to the sounds that exist in the Quran. My first poem is titled Where the Verse Begins. Where the verse begins, in the faraway cave, the frightened nanosecond, the first time you see the body of an angel. The verse begins in the chest of an illiterate man, in the hounding of the literate poet, in the somatic system that shakes, that trills beneath heavy cloth, reverberates in cold shock, in dawning belief. The verse arrives in pieces across the ubiquitous plain of a lifetime, several lifetimes, a slow eternity that unfurls its long body and carries you with it. The verse gathers, the verse commands, the verse is memorized and held in palms raised towards time's open face. The verse stands in my living room, in the familiar turn of my father's body, the resonant decibel as he prays and silence befalls me. He prays, and the verse, unchanging, changes him, softens the long intensity of his life, and it is only then that I realize that the intensity had not been his alone. It had been the shawl around the man, the look of him, and not the man himself. He who is the breathing of a lone child in a waning body. The verse quickens my own breath as it makes its crooning exit from my father's mouth, and I realize that I love this sound, drawn from the body of this particular man, yawning into the expanse of my particular mind. And though the verse is timeless, he is not. And though the verse is endless, he is not. And so he stands to pray. He recites the verse that he has memorized, and I stand reciting the memory of him. I stand still. I stand anticipating grief's eventual hand. I stand with the crooning hope that the verse in my living room may continue living in his particular voice, resonant decibel, slow eternity, from the mouth of a man still a child, the mouth of a man kneeling on the ground, a man startled and bound by his impermanence. And here, the verse is the vehicle that turns him towards enormous belief and tender sound. Thank you. Okay, so between my two pieces, I'm going to do a bit of something different. I have a couple of instructions, and I hope we'll be able to follow them. With this piece, I think a lot of the beauty that I found in it is that I'm familiar with the recitation of Quran, and understanding that the removal of the letters is to kind of highlight the sounds that are found in the Quran, I found is a very beautiful meditation on like just how poignant Quranic recitation is. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reciting a couple of verses from the Quran. What I want from you is typically after the recitation of the Quran, there isn't really any applause. So I'll go into the next piece. But while I am reading, I think in order to best register what you're listening to and what you're hearing, especially if you've never listened to the recitation of Quran, I want you to find a spot, whether it's on the ground or your shoes or the ceiling, anywhere where there's not a person, and really just listen. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. The second poem is a meditation on the dialogue that happens between us and the divine. A lot of the times we walk through our life and we're like looking for a sign that one, God is listening, and that two, the specific experience that you had was like meant for you. So this poem is called 10 Signs from the Lord. 1. Language arrives beautifully on my tongue and elsewhere. There is a mechanism in my brain that makes this a pleasurable experience. I have discovered that a writer is the most beautiful thing to be. 2. The day turns over. Sunlight cascades. Moonlight is gentle and far away. Rain brings with it that familiar smell. It is so simple and so beautiful, and we will never stop talking about it. Dear God, let us never stop talking about it. 3. Of course, I find meaning in my mother, who says words as I am thinking them, whose laughter is girlhood and every precious thing. To each a mother, some point of origin, however muddled and busied. Mine tucks nicknames under her tongue for safekeeping. Mine turns to accusation when she feels distant. Mine is the eldest of 7 sisters. Mine slipped me the cry at everything gene, the older sister gene, the poet and writer gene. She writes all the time. 4. When the blue jay calls, I listen, though this means slowing myself, the rapid movement of my body along the road going always somewhere. I would like to be sure that it's a blue jay, but I'm not, and so I think I'll train my ears. Later, I will learn the difference. I find it romantic to be recognized. 5. Every summer, I'm happy. Every summer comes the month of June, the prettiest month, despite its heat and rain. This has nothing to do with God and everything to do with God. I don't know what makes June so pretty, only that it is, only that my heart receives it swollen and warm. I imagine that God has given me the specific love for June gene so that I may have another month of happiness. 6. God descends to the lowest heaven every night to ask of us, is there anyone who asks of me? My dear merciful Lord, who has created everything and everyone, arrives every night, extends his mercy and listens for voices calling upon him, listens to the clamor of our needs, and it is always night somewhere. 7. When rain's long body grows lighter, I set out my chair from under the ledge. Again, nature. I want to be part of the after rain, though I wish I would have been courageous enough to stand in the downpour. Rain falls like arrows, and I would have been soaked, and so too my notebook, and so too my pen, and had I left them behind, I could not have promised to remember the poem. So I sit in what remains, and I meet the gentle breeze, and I smell the smell of light earth, and all around me the air is dancing, millions of invisible hands waving the rain goodbye. 8. Every year, once a season, and maybe twice a dream, love arrives and never takes the same shape twice. 9. I recognized Colin after 11 years in what felt like a nanosecond. He was walking to work, I realized. Work must have been the grocery shop just outside my neighborhood. Colin, who never smiled, who wore thick glasses and walked with a limp. We'd never spoken to each other, but lived quietly in the same places. Even after all those years, we were still the same. It would not have made a difference had he seen me, and yet somehow I wished he had. Maybe he would have felt the same gratitude that I did then, that he was alive, that I was too, that his name was familiar to me. 10. I speak my own name into the mirror. I repeat it. I trail my eyes over my features. I have a long and private conversation. It begins in that mirror before it turns inward, before it turns to God. Thank you.
Okay, I really want to thank you guys. We're not just finished just yet. We're going to have Aimee come up in a little, or right now actually, to say a few words. And then afterwards, we're going to have a sort of an informal Q&A. So I'll bring the artists up and we'll talk. But this is Aimee Froom, the curator of the Art of Islamic Worlds Gallery.
Thank you, Abdu. I'd like us to give another round of applause for our poets. That was just beautiful. So my name is Aimee Froom. I'm curator for Art of the Islamic Worlds, and on behalf of my team, Anushka and Vivian, and the entire museum, we are grateful to all three of our poets. That was just an incredible experience, and I know that you'll agree with me. If it's your first time in the galleries, or maybe your several hundredth time in the galleries like me, I've never experienced them this way, and this is what we do in Houston, and I'm grateful that you were here to experience it with us. We installed these galleries in 2023. Art of the Islamic Worlds, as you know, from across historical Islamic lands, from Spain to India, Central Asia to Sub-Saharan Africa. And as you can probably glean from looking at the art of the word is the most important form of Islamic art. It's really what unites these very different lands, cultural traditions, languages, regional differences. It brings us all together. From the holy book, the Quran, the word of God, Allah. That is the sacred word, and you will see that throughout the galleries. In our exhibition, in the final gallery here, in a very different interpretation, as you've just heard from Oais here about the Puran Jinji, there's also the secular word, the secular tradition of literature and poetry, as has been evoked this evening. But for me, especially, this was incredible to see our works interpreted in such a meaningful, moving way by our very, very talented local Houston poets. So one more round of applause and come back.
Thank you, Aimee. And one last thing I want to say as well is that me and Aimee, the public programs team, the Art of Islamic Worlds team, we've been kind of baking this up for a while now. We haven't had a lot of programming in this space at all, I'm not sure, like anything like this at least, prior to this. And I think we're about at 70 people, like I counted. And so this is fantastic. I think it's one of our biggest ones so far. So I really want to also thank you guys for coming out. So now I want to bring up the poets. If you guys would come up maybe with camp stools or, yeah. So Raneem, Oais, Maha, want to come up real quick? Yeah. And Aimee, if you want to come as well, maybe, okay, never mind. All right, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot them out. Yeah, we can bring these up. Yeah, thank you. Here you guys go. You can take them one by one. Cool. Excellent. Okay, we got one in the back, Vivian.
My question is kind of for all the poets. Could you give us some insight on how you chose the objects that you wrote about? So the beginning of my question was, could you give some insight on how you chose the objects you wrote about? Or maybe were there some objects that really caught your eye and that you didn't get the chance to write about?
So for me, I actually originally was going to write about a different installation that was in the same area. And once I got to see this piece, I might have just kind of been deadlocked on this area, and I was like, I'm going to work with whatever is here. But actually, it turned out so perfectly because once I read about the background on this piece, it felt very much like an avenue that I wanted to explore, or something that touched base with a conversation that I was already having with myself. I don't know if I gave the rest of the exhibit a fair chance, quite honestly. So that's me.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar experience. I just trusted my instinct and my intuition and where I was drawn to. I came in here and had a tour with Anushka, and it was really just eye-opening and moving, and I took a bunch of pictures, and then when I went home and looked through all the photos, I just thought about, I didn't think, actually. I don't think. I just I just felt, exactly, as us poets do. Yeah, just wherever I was drawn to and wherever lines were emerging for me, I just followed that instinct, and yeah.
For me, I initially came in with the preconception that I was going to actually write about, in a separate gallery a little bit above us, there's this beautiful wooden lattice work, if you will, that immediately I was drawn to because my mother told me stories about how she remembers those kinds of pieces in her family's home. But when I took the tour with Anushka, she was showing us around this gallery, and I previously mentioned I studied history in college, and I've been working on my own sort of private family archive. And so when she mentioned that the Quran that I wrote about was sort of passed down and became on top of being a beautiful piece of scripture, was also then a historical document, that initially called to me. And so I just sort of went with that. And then Layla and Majnun, I feel like it's a very well-known folk tale, and I love folk stories. So I knew I was going to write about it the second I saw it. So I guess I just followed my instincts as well. Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a few more questions. Yeah, Amna? If you want to get the... Okay.
So I noticed that all three of you guys kind of intertwine family into all of your forms, whether, I guess, intentionally or not. I think my question is, how do you feel as though family kind of maybe intermingles with both your craft as a poet writer, but also your engagement with faith or religion, and how those three kind of end up creating something on their own?
For me, the connections feel really linear in my head. When it comes to poetry and writing, I attribute that most to my mom. And that wasn't something that I consciously knew growing up, but after I had arrived at okay, writing is where I feel most nourished, I then realized that she also writes. And so then that became a point of connection for me. And then when it comes to faith, I mean, I think you find your feet with your family. And for me, Islam was introduced to me through my family. And despite the fact that you kind of grow up and realize you have to claim your beliefs as your own, it still begins there. So for me, it's still very, very colored by things that I experienced in childhood, or the way my parents relate to their faith and how I kind of borrow that or use that as a conduit for my own faith. Yeah, so it's pretty clear connections in my brain.
For me, when I started writing poetry, it was really the work of excavation. I was in an African history class. I'm going to bring everything back to college, you guys. I apologize. But it really did change my life. But I was in an African history class, and my professor asked me to do an oral interview process. And I sat my mother down and my aunts, and I asked them questions. And the things that came out of those conversations completely altered my sense of self and also my understanding of my own placement within my family's history. And when I was trying to process that, I could only seem to understand my own perspective in writing. So it was always intertwined with family because my work is deeply interested in my history, and there's no way to separate the two for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll second what both of y'all have said. I think my family and the things that I've inherited feel just inseparable, right, from who I am and my identity. But also in thinking about archive and poetry as an archive, a lot of my family who have passed were illiterate and they were farmers. And so I think even without having access to like the literature of words, their lives embodied a kind of literature, right? And so I want my work to capture that as best as I can. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll take one more question, if you guys have any more, and then we can wrap up. Any other questions from anyone? Don't be too shy. Yeah? Actually, I'll just...
This is for you, I guess. Is Surah Yasin your favorite surah of the Quran, or do you get to practice reciting it on your own a lot? Or what was the process of choosing it and then deciding to recite it?
Yeah, I think, yes, it is one of my favorite chapters. And for me, like the decision of having a recitation was I didn't feel that there was any real way for the poem that preceded it to really land, especially when you're thinking about like the sounds and the sounds coming from someone who is dear to you, and also connecting that to like your faith and this desperate attempt to kind of keep someone alive and where they are. I didn't feel that would fall or register unless you also experience the weight of recitation and how it registers like literally in your body. I think Quranic recitation it's just not like anything else. Like it's not like singing. It's not like, I don't know what you could even compare it to. Even the way that it sits in your mouth as you're reading is different. I have no words to describe it. So you just had to experience it. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Please give another round of applause for our wonderful poets. Feel free to stick around and mingle and chat. The museum closes at 9, so you got plenty of time. Thank you guys again. Thank you.